ado, I'd like to turn it over to Josh.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that introduction, Sean. Paul, thank you so much for having me. Tracy has been raving about this group, and I'm just so glad that I get to be a part of it so early in the year. I know we're kind of kickstarting the year. Lots to think about, lots of fires already to put out, but I'm glad that you're taking a portion of your day and a portion of your time to be with me. And I'm really excited to just talk about what's coming down the pipeline. How soon is it coming, and what does it look like? The future of work as it pertains to Web3 technologies and the metaverse. And like Sean said, I am happy to just let's look at the chat. Let's have your questions there. I will answer them in real time. We'll save a good chunk of the presentation at the end to address some of your concerns directly, but I'm hoping that I can provide the value that you're looking for today. If not, let's ask these questions. Let's dig in deep together. This is a time for exploration. That's really all it is let's explore what this is and what this looks like, what it feels like. I'm just a traveler on this journey alongside you. I'm a Web3 advisor at the Harvard Innovation Lab, so I work very closely with young startups, young, hungry individuals, the next Mark Zuckerbergs, if you will, who are excited to build the future, give them the resources that they need, help them understand where the market is today so that they can position themselves well within the market. But when you really peel back the visions that some of these students have and what the younger generation is bringing to the table as far as future of work, it's really exciting. And so I'm hoping to be a bit of an intermediary with you today. Before we jump into what is the metaverse, what is blockchain technology, what is a smart contract, how is a DAO going to function, let's just look at a simple example of what the shift in workplaces is going to look like from a personal story. When I was a kid, I had a paper route, and that's how you made money. If you were a teenager and you wanted to make money, you either mowed the neighbor's yard or you had a paper route. And so I just remember in the trenches riding my bike on some pretty sketchy roads with my 2 bags on the side of me, throwing papers out like you would see traditionally. I remember 5 a.m. waking up on a Sunday morning and putting the big fat paper into those rainproof bags because it was raining or it was snowing. So I was on my bike riding in these conditions, delivering the paper because the show must go on. And I come from a large family. The paper route was passed down the generations, if you will. I'm second of 7 siblings. And so it went to my younger brother, then to my sister, then to my other younger brother. And it eventually got to the youngest brother. There's a 20-year gap here between me and him. So it's a large gap, but he decided that he was not doing the paper route. And it blew me away. I was like, dude, this is how it's always been done. This is what our family does. We run this paper route. That's how we make money. And he wasn't into it. Come to find out, he was really big into a video game called RuneScape. I don't know if any of you have children who played RuneScape. It's a massive online RPG where you can complete tasks. It's kind of set in a medieval time frame. And he started playing this game just for fun. And then it got pretty serious. He fell into a guild with Theoatrix was the leader of this guild. And he was a big influencer in RuneScape. Everybody knew him in the game. He had the highest levels and the best materials. This guild, he didn't have time to do some of the smaller tasks within the game. So he would get his guild members to go out and work. And so Patrick, my brother, and his guild would go out into the fields of the Lunar Isle, and they would collect these mushrooms that were needed to build better armor, and they would get paid in digital currency. And I was just like, dude, this is crazy. Why are you playing this video game? It's not even real life. It doesn't even make sense. And why do you want digital currency when you can have real money? You could go and get real money where you could buy a skateboard, dude. You could buy rollerblades. And he's like, that's cool, but everything I want to buy exists within this game. I want the Dragon Slayer armor, and I'm 17 levels away, and I need this much money, so I'm working to earn that money. Even if he had physical money, he would just transfer that into digital currency within the game. And I just didn't really understand it at the time, because for me, it was hey, if you want to make money, you got to grind. You got to do it the way that we say it's been done. And from his standpoint, he's looking at it as like, why would you wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning to deliver papers in the rain, doing a job that you actually hate, but you're just doing it so you can get a paycheck? I'm hanging out all day long with my friends in this field, getting mushrooms and getting levels up, and I'm just absolutely loving this experience. I don't need that other stuff. And I think that's just a good opportunity for us to think about why the future of work, especially for the younger generation, is going to shift so dramatically. It's because the things that we care about in the corporate world are not something that they care about that much. I feel like my generation, millennials, we had enough hard time kind of transitioning, and we just kind of grinned and bared it. We said, this is how it's going to work. But man, when you really dig into what HR is dealing with today, we're not talking about the younger generation, how they live their lives, and that's something that needs to be talked about. So that's where we're starting today. I simply want to talk in terms of you all and the roles that you play. It's tough out there. You just came back from 2 to 3 years of absolute transformation. The pandemic changed everything, and HR took the brunt of it in a lot of instances. And you're continuing to take the brunt of it as we're like moving into a tighter economy, and you are having to deal with layoffs and RTO. Like already there's so much that you're dealing with in the workplace. And a lot of times I think HR gets stuck right in the tug of war pull, right? We have organizations on this side who are demanding higher employee engagement. We need more productivity. We need to get more out of our people, and we have less money to hire more people. So we need to be doing a lot of these activities, and you're on the other, employees are on the other end, and they're quiet quitting, which is a term that we've come to be familiar with, where they're not going to do more than they are paid to do at an organization, which led to quiet firing. It's a new thing. Or I don't know if you've heard of this one, shift shock, which I'm not for the buzzwords here. I'm all about, what is really happening within the data. But shift shock is a real thing where companies are hurting for employment and top talent. And so they pitch a job to these candidates that doesn't necessarily match the job description that they'll be doing, in hopes that it'll be exciting enough, and the employer brand actually sabotages the culture at the organization. And so HR is just right in the middle of this tug of war. You're being pulled in a lot of different directions. And RTO is the perfect example, right? We see a need to bring more humanness to work, right? And digital work doesn't work for a lot of individuals. So what do? Managers are saying, we're going back to the office. And because the economy is tight, a lot of employees are shrugging their shoulders and saying, all right, let's do this. But I don't think that's the best solution. And actually, the research shows that remote work drives productivity just as much, if not more. I think the problem that we run into is that we think of remote work in terms of the tools that we're using today. Slack and Zoom are not a workplace, and yet we're comparing it to a workplace. We're saying it's way better to come into the workplace, be around your friends, have water cooler chat. But living in an actual digital workplace is something that we're building right now. For instance, SoWork is a company that is pushing forward a digital office. We are going beyond remote work as it is traditionally looked at today, with these unexciting tools where we are Zoom fatigued and Slack bombed, and we're moving into an actual digital office where you have an avatar that you can customize. You come into the workplace, you can see in this picture, they're in an office having a meeting and collaborating together. They're whiteboarding virtually, and this is an actual screenshot of a team that half of them are in Spain, one of them is in Canada, one of them is actually in Morocco. They're across all time zones, and they can come together in a platform and actually reclaim some of those human elements that we're missing in the workforce. So I believe that the metaverse will make us, yes, more digital, and that's the scary part, but it will also make us more human. We reclaim some of those elements from work that we've lost going remote. And that is the future that we're looking to build. And that's the future that that's at least the start, right? When you come into SoWork, most of this is populating your office with an actual corporation, so you have little control over the culture. It's, a group of people who already have their pre-established cultures coming into a space. The next iteration of this, and this is the jump from Web 2.0 to Web 3, and maybe I can step back and talk a little bit about what that means. But the jump is that we don't need to work for an organization or a corporation directly. We have a crypto network or a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, where we can join, almost like just joining a chat room, and we can start to build value there because it's something that we really love to do. And there are these hyper-niched crypto networks that are going to allow us to do work in a different way. I'm just going to take a step back real quick. I'm not seeing any stuff coming through the chat, and we need to definitely be having a collaborative conversation. So I'm just bringing your attention to that to start asking your questions. I'm going to start calling on people as we go along. So, yes, please.
My name is Alfred Enagbar. I have a question for you.
Yes.
I hear what you're saying about the digital work, the remote work, which I subscribe to 100%. You also now in the workforce have people talking about the hybrid model of work where people are not 100% remote. And the argument there is that you need people to get together at some point to continue building the culture, to continue working together, because you can't not just totally abandon what has worked over the years, even though we are in transition. How do you work, or some examples or direction you can share with leaders who still hold that belief that people need to get together at some point to continue building a culture, especially for the leaders of the organization?
Such a great question. And remind me your name. I thought I heard Alfred. I'm not sure if that's right.
Yes, that's correct. Alfred.
Alfred.
Yes.
Such a great question. And I think a lot of times when we look at the media, they tend to look for the buzzwords and look for what's exciting and new. And we just overplay our hand in terms of how quickly things are going to come about, how soon it is. And a lot of times you think it might just look like we're turning a switch and now we're all of a sudden in the metaverse. That's not how it's going to work. And that's traditional with a Web 1 experience, which was static websites that you didn't interact with. And then we came to an interactive way of being on the internet, which is Web 2.0. It's a Facebook page where you can contribute and you can add comments and you can interact with a CRM. So when I say
recording in progress,
all right, we got a recording going on. All good. When you look at those foundational changes, it doesn't happen all at once. Even though the pandemic kind of made us go remote and test to see if that actually worked, but there are individuals working in the metaverse today, and they are fully remote, and it's working for them. There are people who have no idea what the metaverse is, and I get it, blue-collar workers, factory workers are probably never, or in some small way, going to be entering the metaverse. And so what's the middle ground? And I will say today, hybrid models are table stakes, especially for knowledge workers. You have to have a hybrid model. If you don't, it's going to be harder and harder to capture top talent. I just want to highlight that employee power is shifting. That's a real thing. Employee power, and there's some great research around Forrester around this, where employees now have more options than ever before. And I know in this exact moment, when we look at the economy, it doesn't feel like the employees have the power, and a lot of companies are leveraging their power to bring people back to the office, especially as layoffs are happening. You see layoffs happening by the thousands at Facebook, Apple, Google. Some of these HR tech platforms are laying people off. Lattice just let go 15% of their workforce. So when you see that environment, you're like, oh wow, we need to scale back a little bit, and employers have more power. The answer is though, it's not always going to be that way, and especially as we move forward with some of these new technologies, there's going to be a moment where employees today are dissatisfied and they're choosing to work for other employers. There will be a moment in the near future where they jump ship for a crypto network in the metaverse. And that's already happening when you look at Discord servers. Discord for those of you who are not familiar with it, it started off very much like a video game chat platform. Now it's just like a replication of Slack. It looks just like Slack, but it's more about hanging out rather than working. And there are individuals who are filling that space, and they are providing value for the workforce. There's drone enthusiasts who come together and they realize that like the endurance of drones today could be much better, so they build it themselves and they sell it to governments or they sell it to DJI. So there's ways that value is being generated outside of traditional corporate world. And I realize I'm getting pretty long-winded here, but that's a great question, Alfred. Let's keep rolling with the presentation. If anyone else has some other questions as we go along, let's continue to address them. But this is the big idea, is the power of decentralization. Right now, corporations are a centralized universe. It is a few key shareholders at the top of the organization who are making all of the decisions, and that communication is coming down the chain of command to frontline employees. Especially when you look at employee engagement. Employee engagement is an $800 million industry, and it drives me nuts. I was actually building an employee engagement platform. I sold it at the start of the pandemic, but out of the Harvard Innovation Labs, it was pioneering sentiment analysis in real time. Just because the idea of employee engagement didn't make sense to me. We're running an annual survey or even a quarterly survey. We're getting better at like tracking these metrics, but it still feels outdated in terms of I'm the employer, I have the power in the relationship, you're the employee, I'm going to extract valuable information from you, and I'm going to use that to design employee experiences that you're going to love. Josh Burson's research just showed that only 1 in 10 organizations are actually bringing employees to the table to design those experiences. And that to me and to a lot of organizations who are digital first, it feels backwards, especially to a generation who's used to immediate feedback all the time, always. So how do we get better at gathering this information from a two-way conversation? I am an employee that's giving you valuable information because I know that this is not going to be used to fire me. And I know that this is going to be a collaborative, communicative process to where you don't have a solution. That's fine. I don't need a solution today, but I want to know that you're thinking about it. And I want to know that you've got me in mind. That's when the culture piece, Alfred, comes into place. And decentralization is the jump from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. That is a world where we are. So let's talk some definitions here, right? A DAO is a term you're going to hear a lot in this space. That's a decentralized autonomous organization, meaning there is no shareholders. There is no one at the top of the pyramid making decisions. It is outsourced to the group, to the individuals, and it's a democratization of work where everyone can vote and they can make decisions based on what the group wants. And the reason why that model works is because it sits on a smart contract. A smart contract is a contract actually built into the code of the organization itself that is established by the group that says, if you work in a certain way or if you generate a certain value, here is the currency, or here's the type of value that you receive back from the organization. Are smart contracts impervious today? Absolutely not. There have been a lot of wild, wild west moments in the past few years around decentralization. You've probably heard of FTX at this point. You probably didn't know what that was, or if you're trading crypto, you do know what that is. But it was, I don't have to get into the details. It caused a lot of issues around the trust of these organizations. And that's the whole point, is we need to get to a place where we can trust it. It's not going great, to be honest. Like, no one in mainstream, at least, trusts a DAO, trusts a smart contract, and they're pulling back. Even Binance is losing money right now because investors are pulling back their investments. Does that mean that the technology failed? No. Does that mean that smart contracts are a terrible idea and they shouldn't be trusted? No. It means that it's new. And it's hard when people like Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg kind of point out to left field and they say, this is what the metaverse is, this is what's going to be. They've spent billions at this point. They don't really have much to show. And so what does that mean? Does that mean that we should stop paying attention and we can go back to our lives? Which, to be honest, sounds like a natural fit. It sounds nice and comfortable to do that. But when you really start looking at companies like Microsoft, who have their mesh platform, or Facebook, who obviously isn't giving up and continuing to drive things forward in the metaverse, you really start to take a harder look at these technologies and realizing that this is the future that is coming. Let's be aware of that. So with that said, let's jump into it a little bit here. These are the operating principles that are coming out in a book that my co-author and I are writing. We just landed a major book deal with Harvard Business Review Press because these principles are sound and the research is sound, and a lot of changes are coming from that standpoint. Today, I just want to kind of focus on 3 with all of you today, and I'm just taking a look at the chat. I'm not seeing much going on here. Emily just wrote something here. I'm just going to read this. Sorry to be off video. You may be going on here, but can you speak to what type of value the metaverse could provide for a company? Is it more culture and engagement, productivity, or all of the above? As a novice, it is easier to see the social/fun/culture side of the coin or virtual offices. Harder to get my head around the potential for it to have more teeth from a business outcomes standpoint. I love that question, Emily, and the fact that you ask it means that you're not a novice, because you are thinking deeply about how this works and how do we transition from corporate events in Jamaica to corporate events in the metaverse, especially when we looked at like doing digital events. I don't know about you guys, but I never went to a digital event, which was like, this is great. This is an awesome experience. I do believe that it will get there, and it doesn't entail putting goggles on. There's a lot of great technology coming out there. But when you look at the reason why Josh Burson, for instance, doesn't believe in the metaverse, at least yet today, he just believes that like we can't reclaim what makes us human in those environments. We can't have a great work culture in a digital space. And while I hear him, you also look at what he cares about most is the productivity within an organization. That's not what employees are about anymore. and I'm making a general sweeping statement with that, but employees, as we have seen with the pandemic, are shifting more to I want fulfillment, not productivity. And productivity leads to fulfillment from time to time. But a lot of times, like if you're asking me to do unfulfilling work just for the sake of productivity, I don't want to do it. We make big claims about how there's less talent in the workplace. How do we recover that talent? It's because they're working mothers that want a job and they want fulfillment in the workplace, but like the system isn't built for them. So they're gone. That's a problem. It's not built for, a large family that plays Roblox together, which is a thing, and they make money that way. There are family influencers on YouTube that make a lot of money just because they're filming the day-to-day of their life. And so there are more opportunities to do that. Let's take Matthew's comment here. Does a digital space preclude us from being on camera in real life? That's a good question. When you look at what the alternative is, it's like Facebook has an avatar that doesn't even have legs, and no one even wants that. And now, like the big statement in 2022 was, we now have legs. They tweeted that out, and that was like one of the most ridiculous tweets ranked on BuzzFeed now, which is hilarious. So is it an avatar? Is it virtual glasses? Is it maybe just like an office like you are used to, and now you're taking your cadence from a hologram boss? The answer is, like, we're building it. Nobody knows what is going to land with mainstream. I don't think that AR, VR glasses is going to be the thing in the near future, just because it's not an immersive experience within the physical world. However, you look at what we're doing right now, like we're meeting in a virtual space from all over the world, and you can turn your camera on or off to eat. I think there's a debate. There's a great HBR article that was just written, like, do we have to have our cameras on? I know a lot of companies are requiring that. So it's yet to be determined, I think. But let's jump into some of these principles here. The first principle is ownership. What does ownership look like from a work generating content value perspective, the corporate world that we live in is extremely extractive. When a new employee is hired, the first thing that they do is they sign a contract that says that any ideas that you have, any inventions, any frameworks, any products that you come up with is property of the company. And I don't know why we are still doing it this way. And it makes sense from a company standpoint because, we need to have a non-disclosure agreement. We don't want our secrets to get out. But at the same time, there are employees who are generating a massive amount of value for an organization, and all they get out of it is a paycheck. A decentralized model allows employees to retain greater ownership of the work that they do because it's baked into the actual agreement. It's like they are a shareholder at this DAO now. And the reason why it's different from the models that we're currently looking at is because organizations, in order to be more attractive, and we're learning that paying them more isn't necessarily the thing that they want. It still holds a lot of value, but what companies want is, maybe they want more equity in a company. So companies will give equity out, but the problem with that equity model is it's still an arbitrary number that isn't tied to the value that that person is generating for the organization itself. And there's a long vesting schedule. Yes, you'll give me some equity, but it's going to vest over 4 years. I'm not planning on being at this job for 4 years. This is a great pit stop for me in my career, but that model just doesn't stand for a lot of employees, so they end up walking away with nothing. The anything economy is what's coming for skilled labor, and it's working today in the form of a Discord server, in the form of Uber, in the form of a YouTube channel. YouTube, let's look at the anything economy from YouTube. You can make a video on anything that you want, and as long as you build a community, you can make money off of that. Well, YouTube is a centralized organization housed under Google, and it takes a large cut of the revenue in order to keep the lights on. Creators on YouTube are starting to get frustrated with this model because they're working so hard to make these videos and they're not being compensated fairly for it. What if we take that same model and we apply it to skilled labor? And it's coming. The development of the talent marketplace is huge right now. Companies like Gloat, Fuel 50, Magnet, Eightfold, there's a lot of tools out there that are pioneering what a talent marketplace looks like. And what it is today is, hey, there are some untapped resources, some untapped skills at an organization. Let's tap into them. Let's bring them to the organization, and let's see where these people fit in the projects that need to be completed. It's a great model to develop tiger teams to go out there and generate additional skills for an organization, which is that's the hot thing right now, is how do you develop more skills out of an organization in order to get to that place. But why do we have to limit that to an organization itself? Internally, it makes sense. A global talent marketplace is where I think HR tech is going to go. It's going to be one company who goes in there and does this better than anyone else, that allows core contributors, that's a word that we use in this space, or bounty hunters. Core contributors or bounty hunters can chase projects. They can be, it's different than that, right? Because Upwork right now is a freelance site where you can go on there and say, these are my skills, and they can apply for jobs and projects, and they can get booked on that. The onus is on the person themselves, the core contributor, to go out and seek those things. And it's still a hustle. It's still a grind. What if we outsource that to AI? So AI comes in and they match this individual with the perfect fit based on their skills, with the perfect DAO. And now they're mixing and matching additional streams of income. And they are working in a way that gives them the flexibility that they want. That's ownership in a new world of work. We have flexibility. In terms of flexibility, when we talk in HR, we talk a lot about the hours worked, the time that you're on the clock. How many years have you been at the organization? And how can we be more flexible in letting you go for a run at 2 p.m. because that's how it works for a specific employee. Individualized, customized work schedules are here. And that's something that a lot of companies are working towards, and it's important. The metaverse kind of opens up and expands the definition of flexibility to working within an ecosystem. I don't have to work for a company anymore. I can work within an ecosystem that makes more sense to my talent, my skills, what I love to do. Why that's important is because now employees can hyper niche in the skills that they want to do instead of dealing with the 90% of the bureaucracy they have to deal with within an organization. It kind of opens up this world for, instead of, like I showed you SoWork earlier, or Verbella, some of these digital platforms now open the doors for you to build your own community, your own DAO, just because there are like-minded individuals who want to contribute to a project, and you can do that without having to be beholden to an organization. I think a great example of what that looks like today is Roblox or Fortnite. Within these video games, there's now a creator mode where you can go in and build your own rules. You can build your own village. You can build your own currency. You can build your own mini game around this. And then it goes to the creator marketplace. And in the creator marketplace, kids like my 6-year-old son can go there and they can pick games that they just really like. Like if they're looking for a horror game within Roblox, they can pick a horror game where Shrek chases them. Or they can play a game with their friends that isn't necessarily a part of the mainstream game. It's opened up now to a group of individuals who are excited about that. And you're seeing communities come together in ways that you've never seen before, where, there was a town in Finland that literally recreated their city, their town, within Roblox. And you could go to work driving in a car and earn digital currency within that world. And so that's the kind of flexibility that we're talking about, is not necessarily having to work in traditional employment doing things like we would see normally. It's expanding that definition. And finally, agency. This is something that's really important, I think, for the way that we manage employees. Intrinsic contributors can come in and then they can change the way that they experience work. So right now, if I am a CEO, there's a lot of important decisions to be made. The CEO of Disney, if you've kind of seen that example in recent spheres, Bob Iger came in and they had to let the other CEO go, and now he's inviting everyone to come back to work because that's how it works. Marcus Buckingham just wrote an article about that, how it's not necessarily chasing the research about remote work. But that's a decision that he made, and he's, the top of the food chain, so that's just how things are going to be. And if you don't like it that way, you can go out and get another job because there's someone in line looking for that. What about frontline employees who have been doing this job a long time and can see the discrepancies in the work that they're doing? They can see the bottlenecks, and they can help free those. That to me is a great way for employees to kind of regain the agency that they have, not only to give us great feedback so we can understand how to design experiences for them, but so that we can give them a better opportunity to do it their way in a way that makes sense and watch those models flourish. I realize I've been doing a lot of talking, so I'm going to kick it over to Sean here. He says that we've got a few questions that came in directly. I'm going to take a pause right here, and we're going to open it up to some questions. Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. And I had a few questions come directly to me that were kind of in the same area, and it's basically asking, you've kind of laid out and helped us understand a little bit more about the metaverse and what decentralization is relative to, employment or being able to earn, I guess is the easier way to put it. A lot of the questions are relative to, employment and the employer being one end of the spectrum and the total decentralization of everything being the other end of the spectrum. Is there the opportunity to utilize the metaverse and this technology inside of a centralized employer to gain, to gain some competitive advantage from a talent perspective, to be more thoughtful around the current employee base? I guess, a middle ground is what I'm helping frame for some of the folks asking.
Yeah, and I appreciate that question, Sean, because There are some pretty hardcore believers in the metaverse who will say, sorry, old school corporations, you're done for. Like, there's nothing we can do. You can't pivot fast enough. This is just going to take over and leave you behind, which isn't helpful in any way, especially to this audience who is in the trenches as practitioners working with organizations. Where I see the middle ground is in designing employee experiences. It's something that we talk a lot about, and that is a huge umbrella. What does that actually look like in terms of production, in terms of communication and teamwork and culture? How we need to start thinking about it is not necessarily this is the culture of the organization and we make a bold statement of what that's going to be. We put it up in the break room and this is what our culture is. A culture in today's world is literally coming from the workers themselves. And when that discrepancy comes is when the culture that is set forth from executives and the culture that the employees are experiencing doesn't match. HR, again, is that rope in the tug of war being stretched thin. I think a great starting point is let's just talk to employees about what they want and what they need out of their organization. What would be a fulfilling experience? Not necessarily a productive experience for them, but what would be a fulfilling experience that would help them do their best work? And honestly, that answer doesn't sound great to some executives. It's, I work best if I can work from home. I just need to be in my space because that's where I do my best work. Or I work really well at 11 p.m. at night or 6 a.m. in the morning. Why do I have to be constrained to a 9 to 5 or an 8 to 6? So we need to start being fairly radical in the traditional sense of how we're designing those experiences and not being afraid to let go of some of that control, because employee power is real and they can choose to work for the organization or not. And I'm afraid that the breaking point will be employees leaving Glassdoor reviews or leaving the organization and having a bad experience, so they just stop working altogether. Matthew asked another great question. Let's handle this one. How do you envision we will validate skills and capabilities in ramping up in the metaverse? How do we begin to onboard participation and build rapport rather than having people start anew from a blank slate? I mean, that's a great question. HR is really good at all of these things, and there's a lot of tech, like your tech stack is designed specifically to do these things. So are we saying throw away the tools that we've been using and bring in a new tool? No, not at all. If you have a remote workforce, I would say something you need to do immediately is get a digital office space. That's going to bring a lot of your culture back into the forefront in a remote environment. And hopefully that will bring back some productivity so that we can show the numbers internally of our culture and our experiences actually working in the favor of employees. In terms of sourcing talent, I mean, like I'll bring that to recruiters. Recruiters, it's cutthroat out there right now. And we just need to make sure that the relationship with the employer for employees can be something that is healthy. It's no longer about a work contract. It's about a work partnership. People want to partner with organizations that they believe in, that share their same values, and they want to do great work there. But when you start pulling some of the stuff that's traditionally how we do it with employment, where like we need you to work a little extra, but we can't pay you for that, or we're overloading your work schedule because we don't have enough talent, and you're here, so we like that's just not a healthy relationship. When we really take it back to relationships, that's when we start to see ways that an employer can improve. Great. Evan, let's see what we have here. Understand the central/decentralized dynamic. How do you see performance management changing in the metaverse? I love that question. Employee experience platforms, a $1 billion industry right now. Our eyes are on performance management. That's what we care about the most. And we tend to hide it behind, we need to be the empathetic CHRO. We need to be the empathetic leader. But we also need to produce results for the organization. So what's the balance there? It's different from organization, but it all comes down from developing a level of trust versus control at the organization. How much do employees actually trust you, the manager, the frontline manager? How do they trust that the organization is steering the organization in a healthy way? And that's a way for us to start getting a barometer for, do they trust us? If the answer is no, how do we get them to trust us? Well, let's talk to them. Let's ask them. And performance management tools will come in and be like, here's how you schedule a one-on-one. Here's how you track those notes. Here's how you look at their skill set and how we elevate that. All of that is helpful. But sometimes we get so obsessed with the numbers and the productivity that we're providing, and we forget that the whole point of it is to be more empathetic with our employees, hear them out, and move forward in a way that makes sense for them specifically. Great. I love this. We've got some good questions here. Wanjiru says, how will the metaverse impact healthcare professions, especially where physical presence is needed? Do you foresee some professions becoming less desirable? I mean, that's a great question. I think healthcare is going to be, they're both an early adopter and a late adopter. Like, you're not going to be doing surgeries in the metaverse for a very long time, hopefully. Or hopefully not. I don't know. Maybe we're closer than I know. But there is a physical presence that is needed. How do you adjust? I think the healthcare industry is going to do a lot with the way they've been doing it with like WebMD or having virtual checkups with your doctor. You don't need to come in. You don't need to pay an expensive copay. You can do it all in home. And AI could be leveraged here too. ChatGPT is a big scary thing right now, but it also offers a lot of opportunities for chatbots to be really tight. Maybe in the future we see an AI doctor seeing patients rather than the actual doctor, because some things are extremely urgent, some things are not. I'm just, spitballing some of those things. Tracy just dropped a great article in here to watch, to read through on Axios. Aaron says, is psych safety built into your 8 previous slide? I ask because I can see that this dovetailing nicely with an organization working toward a trauma-informed people strategy. Are there products that fully remote organizations are using now to create an online workplace? That is such a great question. Trauma-informed people strategy. That's such an important way to look at it. Aaron, thanks so much for sharing. The answer is absolutely yes. There are products out there on the market that admittedly need a lot of work, but are creating that online presence where you can be more remote. SoWork is an example I use a lot. Verbella is a great example. GatherTown is a company that's very focused on not necessarily the world itself, but how do we create a platform that removes the need for so many meetings? That alone is a huge opportunity. Sean, I'm going to go ahead and kick it back over to you.
Yeah, Josh, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. And